in the world where a crime is committed and people do not leave trails behind. So even the site of the burning and the killings wasn't even cordoned off in the first place. You see, when we say there's a complete systemic failure in Nigeria, people just think we are just speaking. The crime scene, has it been cordoned off? Are there forensic experts there? Are there people taking surveillance? Are there people that are even able to map out the bullet shells to be able to trace where the bullets are coming from in the first place? So there are many things that have happened in that community. And that's why I'm happy that the security chiefs have gone in there. Let them start their investigation. By now, we should be able to see that some of these perpetrators are being brought to book. It has to be an holistic approach. Secondly, is the humanitarian crisis that has happened there. The Catholic Church has done a lot of work, but there's still a lot of help. NEMA reported that over 1,000 households are affected. Thousands of men, thousands of women, hundreds of lactating mothers and the likes. Are we giving them their medicine? Are we looking for drugs for them? Are we catering to their feeding and shelter? What are we doing for them as we speak now? What's the psychosocial support like? What's the institutional support like? Also, what is the reporting channel like if people are seeing unscrupulous elements moving around that area? The question is, we do not want what happened in Benue to happen, but with the way we do things, it looks like we might come here and talk about another Benue debacle. In the course of 2-3 years, we've had thousands of people killed in Benue. What did we do to avert the killing? What was the investigation like? Who were those fingered? Before these attacks this year, we had close to 500 people killed already. Were we able to effectively plan for them? What is the support scheme for the families of the victims? Or we just tell them to bury their dead and move on like nothing happened? I think these are the things I want President Tinubu to address when he goes there. Because we need to be very holistic in our thought process, or else Benue will happen again. Niger floods happened the other day. What did we do as regards it? We've talked about the fact that there will be increased rain this year. So collectively, as a nation, if we don't have a culture for planning, if we don't have a culture for organization, then we'll always fall short. And that's why Peter Drucker will always talk about cultural eating strategy for breakfast. And that's where we are. So it's not just solidarity, face-saving visits. It's actually doing the work on ground. And government needs to release a lot of spending as regards that.
All right, I'll come into the, bring us back into the Lagos studio, Vimbai. I mean, like I read out earlier, the president says he's going to visit on Wednesday. And, you know, we talked about the fact that even ahead of his visit, he had deployed, you know, security agencies, the National Security Advisor, the Chief of Defense Staff. We had seen the IGP of police there who had said that they have been making efforts. It's not because they don't, you know, report their efforts, which I would love to see more of, some of their wins, because what we are seeing now is a lot of, you know, carnage, death, people that are being burnt to the ground. We want to see more of that. But it's quite reassuring that he has said that, you know, they have boots on ground at this moment, Vimbai.
Absolutely. When they do the right thing, it's important that we acknowledge and we applaud that and we encourage more of it. You know, but in the spirit of applause, I think it's so important for us to also acknowledge Pope Leo XIV. You know, when we were talking about the Pope and there was debate about does it matter if the Pope might be African, and then we now went into the detail of the Pope's relationship and his history with Nigeria, some people thought we were doing a little bit of pandering and it was too much fanfare. But largely, if not for that statement from the Pope over the weekend, that brought the world's attention to this issue, it possibly could have been business as usual, because this is not the first time we've had this scale of killing happening in the Middle Belt and in other parts of the country. So it's important for us to acknowledge that and to thank the Pope as well, because it has led to a remobilization. Like you've said, the security agencies are on the ground. The SGF, who the people of Benue State had been complaining and saying we have an SGF who's from Benue State, but he's yet to to speak up about the issue. He is part of the advance team that's preparing for the president's visit. So I think all things are in order. However, why is it important for them to act decisively with this? Because like you can hear from the history that was spelled out by Governor Hyacinth earlier, is the fact that this crisis is decades old. It started as a herder-farmer issue. Then it has now snowballed and evolved into something else. What does that tell you? If we don't deal decisively with one criminality, it emboldens other criminals to join the bandwagon for no particular reason. So I hope that strategically we can come up with a number of issues. The Chief of Defense Staff we highlighted earlier also mentioned the fact that he feels that there's some type of saboteurs working within the armed forces. I hope that can be dealt with decisively as well, because this type of situation where you hear that there are soldiers stationed close by to an area where there was an attack went on for so many hours, but nothing happened, is concerning. So I really hope this is also an opportunity for the armed forces to weed out the bad eggs that are giving our armed forces, who are fighting so hard, a bad name. Very important for all hands to be on deck and for there to be a united front within the armed forces as well, as much as we want that from the communities.
Well said, Adefemi, I wanted us to just highlight the governor's comment again. And, I don't know if you heard the brief history that he gave as, saying that we're not just being attacked by herders, we're also being attacked by terrorists, which is, a twin problem for him at this point. Before I come to you, I want to just take this story so we can tie it all together. Meanwhile, tensions flared in Makurdi, the Benue state capital, on Monday morning after the killings, as angry youth drove out a herd of cattle reportedly owned by Dixon Takier, a member of the House of Representatives for the Makurdi Guma Federal Constituency. Let's take a look.
This cows belongs to the Honorable Rep. Dixon Taki. Last night he took them to Nwajumu settlement, and the youth of Nwajumu today said that these cows cannot live with them. They should be protecting lives other than protecting cows. So the youth of Nwajumu now chase these cows away. As you can see, the cows are roaming on the road. And then the people taking care of these cows are the Fulanis, up to 6 Fulanis. 6 Fulanis. These are Dixon's cows. Dixon is harboring 6 Fulanis to protect these cows. But the youth of Nwajumu today said, no, these cows cannot live in their community.
And we also saw a viral video showing security operatives allegedly escorting cattle through the city, sparking widespread reactions amid the growing insecurity. Let's take a look.
Sister, look at cows in Makurdi. Sister, look at cows in Makurdi. Benue state government is escorting the Makurdi capital. Sister, look.
Oh my God! Can you imagine this?
So you see the two sides to the story. On one hand, we're seeing the security forces escorting this, Fulani herdsmen, because, if you ask them, how do they know that they are Fulani? There's a language that they speak, and so they are able to identify them. At this point, they are, being also, attacked because of these sort of insecurity.
Like they are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the level of importance. If we're talking about insecurity and death and killing, the people should at first and foremost feel protected. But essentially what we're seeing in both videos is that clearly there's a lot of effort being put on the protection of these animals, right? Mm-hmm. And if you put that in comparison to the people, you can understand why they feel as though, well, first and foremost, if if these animals are bringing in the situation which we're trying to fight against, get them out of here. And then there's a slap in the face of seeing how well these animals are being protected against the backdrop of people who quite literally don't have any protection. And if we go back to what the president said at the beginning of your segment, he made the analogy of how we are all living in the same house but just in different rooms.
Yes.
But the situation here is that the room that these people are living in is completely dilapidated. They have no roof. They have no wind being seen that we are seeing. So when the president does eventually come to Benue tomorrow, we're hoping that he comes to first and foremost acknowledge the pain of the people and then give them a real list on what is going to be done. Because if we're saying, okay, we're going to put military in these different vulnerable areas to keep you protected, but then we're hearing that there are members of the military who are going against their, directives and not doing what they're supposed to do. Okay, so what is actually going to be the next thing you're going to do? And then how are you going to protect people's lives? How are you going to protect their livelihoods? What are you really going to do to change their immediate reality? Because it gets to a point, which is where we're at now, where conversations and visits just isn't enough. There needs to be something.
Right. Rufai, I'd like your thoughts on both stories. On one hand, we're seeing that, the government is, protecting the Fulani herders. On the other hand, we're seeing young people going after these herders in Makurdi.
You see, it is an indictment on our country that cattle are roaming around our streets when they should be kept in confined spaces. Haji, go to Argentina. Go to big beef producing nations. How many times do you see that we have cattle roam around the streets, that we move them from point A to point B? We have said consistently that those that want to do this beef business must be able to provide infrastructure for them to graze. In fact, this idea of cattle roaming around affects the quality of meats. I can tell you that because I also did a course called Meat Science. There's something called the quality of meats. So when you see all of this happening, and you now see our military forces, or you see security forces, beg your pardon, now saying, oh, we must direct them back to town, angry you chasing cow. In 2025, if we are thinking, should cow be the priority of Nigeria? Other economies are thinking of how to go to the moon, how to go to the space, how to bring their people out of poverty. We are having back and forth over Malu. It shows there's something dysfunctional with our faculties in this country. That cows have become the order of the day and priority. That in 2025, we are even reporting it on national TV, how we are chasing cows back and forth. People have politicized cows. Oji, cows shouldn't cause problems. People that want to do business of cow should be able to keep their cow in a confined space. Pure and simple. And this should not be a matter of states. Because the way we are going, I just pray one day we'll not have a constitution for cow in this country. Let us make peace reign. Whatever the crises are between the herders and the farmers should be sorted out, and people should not be allowed to pass their boundary. I'm just surprised. I'm at sea at what is happening in this country.
I know.
Cow.
Yes.
This conversation today.
You're absolutely spot on, Rufai. I mean, the call for ranching has never been louder. I mean, the issue in Benue State really needs an overhaul at this moment. Meanwhile, we're getting reports that the principal special assistant to the governor of Benue State on youth and media mobilization, Atu Joseph, has suspended his chief of staff and chief press secretary for participating in protests against the ongoing killings in the state. In a letter addressed to them, Atu Joseph alleged that they undermined his authority and breached the trust of the oppositions. The suspension was said to be indefinite, and both men are reportedly barred from carrying out official duties or representing the office. Vimbai, I know you had to laugh. I know you had to.
The principal special assistant is suspending his own chief of staff and chief. So special assistants now have chiefs of staff and chief of...
I have not heard this one before.
Chief press secretary.
This is the quagmire.
That's on a lighter note. On a lighter note. On a more serious note, I had to read that release almost 3 times because I thought, I was wondering why a special assistant or a special advisor is firing the governor's chief of staff and chief press secretary, only to realize that, no, it's his own team that he has. Anyway, wonders will never cease to amaze me. However, although the letter did not specifically state what acts against their principal they committed, the context is that they participated in those protests that we saw taking place in Benue State over the weekend, which is just so unfortunate and disgraceful, is that the government is clearly, in many ways, helpless and trying to get attention to this issue. If not for some of this advocacy, that who knows whether the necessary attention would have been given to Benue State. It was a peaceful protest. You can see them. They're carrying leaves. There were young people. There were women. There were children who were just trying to get the world's attention to what's going on in their state. There's even a police escort. Yes, they do claim that the protest was hijacked and some people were arrested, and we saw those scenes of tear gas and so forth, to which people are saying, where was this aggression when the attack was happening? Why were the police not this alert when the local government area was being ransacked by criminals? But when it's just defenseless, peaceful protesters, suddenly we remember our gra-gra. So this is very unfortunate. As for the suspension of these 2 gentlemen, we appeal to the principal special advisor to the governor of Benue State to rescind this suspension with immediate effect, because they were acting in the interests of their state, because, like I always like to remind people, government appointees are not to act in the interest of their principal, they are to act in the interest of the country. They serve the constitution, not individuals. So important to draw those lines.
I like that. Thank you, Vimbai. Did you want to make a quick comment before we head to Enugu State regarding the suspension of these these protesters? I mean, you don't even know if a member of their family was affected in this whole tragedy, Adefemi.
No, we don't know what the situation is and whether or not, like you say, it's very likely that they could have a personal tie to what is happening. And clearly, this is something that everybody is condemning, really and truly. We can all agree that there needs to be more being done in Benue State. But I do think that, I mean, we're making a bit of out of a molehill. It's a suspension. It's not clear for how long. Eventually they'll come back and perhaps they can sort out whatever issues that they had with the person or the peoples who have suspended them. I really don't think it's that big of a deal. What I do think is a bigger deal is obviously what is happening in Benue State, and that's where we should really be focusing our attention.
Again, we call on the security forces to double down their efforts. The issue of insecurity continues to plague the northeast area. Also in Enugu State, in the wake of the deadly attack, which occurred on Monday, June 9th, by suspected armed Fulani headsmen, another person remains missing. We saw that viral picture of one young woman who was laying in, with a leaf covered up. The attack was said to have occurred in Eha and Mufu local government area of the state. We're calling on the state governor to look into the story. A community leader had confirmed that the incident and said that the people in that area are frustrated and they are living in fear due to the reported killings. Rufai Oseni, your thoughts on Enugu as well?
I lost the audio connections for a bit. It was a bit hazy. But, Oji, you see, like I said before, you can almost predict what will happen if some things are not done. If the story is about killings again in Nigeria,
in Enugu State,
it is indicative of the trend and the culture of not doing things right. The question is, what did we do to forestall the last killing? What did we do to create buffers? If all of that is not in place, then you will have continuous skirmishes and continuous killings. And you see, it is shocking that all of this is happening in Nigeria. And we have become so used to it now that all we just do is to react and nothing happens. We call on the authority, investigate. Absolutely. But when you say investigate in this country, investigation is very hard though, because it is in this same country that the Attorney General died, was killed, nothing happened. Dele Giwa died so many years, nothing happened. Many other killings, the likes of Harry Marshall, many other killings have happened, nothing happened. So we have a culture that is so quick to move on. And you really wonder who gets brought to book.
All right, Rufai, thank you. Well, let's head over to Iran now. Highlight